Hey, what's up guys, it's Jonathan here. So for most of us, purchasing a car is one of the first major expenses we make in our lifetime. And for the average person, it's usually the second most expensive recurring expense. And since our educational system has failed at properly teaching people how to manage their money, most young adults have zero clue where to start in the car buying process. So in this video, we're going to discuss the 9 steps you need to take to buy a car in the most financially wise manner. So if this video provides you any value, consider hitting the like and subscribe button. It really helps out with the YouTube algorithm and to push this video out to the 4 corners of the YouTube universe. So let's get right into it. The first thing you want to do when you buy a car is you want to determine how much car can you afford. And typically the rule of thumb is that all the costs related to your car should be less than 20% of your take-home income. This includes costs like your car payment, your car insurance, maintenance, gas, and registration. And later on in this video, we're going to discuss how to calculate each cost precisely. So if this is the first car you're buying, it may be difficult for you to make all those costs less than 20% of your income. So if that's the case, then you may want to increase your budget to 30% of your income. But if possible, try to keep it as close as you can to 20%. So the second step is to come up with a list of cars that you want to buy. So in my opinion, if you're buying your first car, you should almost always buy a used car. And the main reason for this is because most new cars tend to lose about 50% of their value in the first 3 years. So I recommend getting a car that's at least 3 years old. So most likely if you're buying your first car, you're either a high school student, a college student, or a young adult. And at this stage of life, this is some of the best wealth building years you have. So you should only get as much car as you need and try to avoid straddling any unnecessary debt. So once you develop the list of cars that you may want to buy, we can move on to the next step. So the third step is to start shopping for auto loans. And if you plan to pay for the car in cash, you can skip this step. You want to shop around with different lenders to see what kind of interest rate you could get on your auto loan. And most lenders are going to want to run a credit score to give you the most accurate figure they can. But most people get scared because they don't want multiple hard inquiries on their credit report because they're afraid that it may ruin their credit score. Well, the truth is that if you get multiple hard inquiries on your credit score within a 14-day time span, they all count as one hard inquiry. So let the lender go ahead and run a hard inquiry on your credit report. Just make sure you get all of your quotes in a timely manner. In my personal experience shopping around for auto loans, I've noticed that you usually get the worst rates from the bigger banks like Chase and Bank of America, and then you get better rates from smaller banks, and then you usually get the best rates from credit unions. So let's keep that in mind, but also remember that everyone's situation is different. So you might actually get a better rate at a bigger bank. So it's always good to shop around with all the options you have. So after the lender runs your credit, most likely they'll give you different rates, and it'll all depend on the term of the auto loan. The normal term for an auto loan is about 60 months or 5 years. But what term length you eventually decide to go with is completely up to you. Personally, I like to go with the longest term, and this is because of the concept of time value of money. And basically what this is that over time, the value of the dollar decreases. So if you have outstanding debt, over time, the decaying value of the dollar makes your debt easier to pay off, as the number value of your payments are fixed, but the value of your dollars decrease over time. So you're probably thinking, what about dealer financing? And we'll get into that later on in the video. So the fourth step is to look up how much each car on your list costs. So for each car on your list, determine how much the car payment, insurance, maintenance, gas, and registration would cost on the car. And for the car payment, you can determine that number pretty easily. Start by looking up how much the car costs. And this could be done by a simple Google search. If you search something like used Ford F-150s for sale in Phoenix, Arizona, or something that's more applicable to your situation, that will give you a ballpark figure of how much the car costs in your area. Then you want to take that number, the interest rate quote that you got from the lenders, and the term length, and put that into a loan calculator. And you can find a loan calculator by just Googling loan calculator, and you'll find a bunch of different calculators that will work. So then you can use the loan calculator to determine your monthly payment. Once you get your monthly car payment amount figured out, the next thing to figure out is insurance. So typically the cheapest way to get insurance is by getting on a policy of somebody who has more driving experience than you do. This usually ends up being significantly cheaper than you getting your own policy. And when it comes to how much coverage you'll need, that's an extremely difficult subject to cover, and it depends on so many factors that if I tried to go over it in this video would probably be like an hour long. The best advice I could tell you is to be very knowledgeable in the different kinds of coverages that your insurance company offers, and ask an insurance agent about different coverages so you can learn more about them. You can also look up on YouTube and on Google for more guidance on how to pick the right car insurance policy for you. Next is maintenance costs, and to determine this can be a little tricky. One way you can determine how much car maintenance will cost you is by running your car through a cost to own calculator. These cost to own calculators give you a 5-year lookout on how much maintenance would probably cost you on that car. And what you could do with this information is that you can add up the costs for all 5 years and divide it by 60. And that'll give you a monthly amount of how much you need to put aside for car maintenance. But in my opinion, if you're looking for rough numbers, I would say that you probably need to save at least $50 to $100 a month for car maintenance. I think this is a good range to cover you for any expected and unexpected car repairs. So when it comes to gas, I think the best way to estimate it is to determine how many miles you drive throughout the week, then get that number and divide it by the miles per hour that your car is rated for. That'll give you how many gallons a week of gas that you use. Then you want to take that number and multiply it by 4.25, and that'll give you how many gallons you use per month. Then you want to get that number and multiply it by the current gas prices. That'll give you a monthly estimate of how much gas should cost every month. I personally like to multiply that number by 1.1 to account for any extra random trips or any extremely hot days where I have to run my AC the whole day. And then when it comes to registration, you can estimate this cost by going to your state's online DMV website. Most states usually have a calculator that will actually let you determine how much your registration fees will cost. Another way you can find it is by Googling your state's DMV registration calculator. Also, as a side note, I wanted to mention some other fees that you should consider as well when you buy a car. So in 4 states, Connecticut, Virginia, Rhode Island, and Mississippi, you have to pay personal property taxes on your cars. Also, in certain areas, you also have to do routine smog checks as well. So those are 2 costs that you should keep in mind that are kind of one-offs, that they can significantly change your buying power when it comes to vehicles. So now, since we've calculated the monthly cost of each car on your list, so the next step is to compare the costs of each of the cars on your list to your budgeted amount that you determined earlier in this video. And this is pretty straightforward. It probably won't take you more than 5 minutes to do this. And any car that's way outside of your budget, like anything more than 30% of your take-home income, I would highly consider that you get a different car, because the last thing you want to do is become car broke. So after you pick the cars that are within your budget, the next thing to do is to head off to a dealership and go shopping for cars. Typically in the used car market, there are 2 main sellers. There are dealerships and there are private party sellers. With the private party sellers, they are usually individuals trying to sell their own cars. And because of this, they're usually a lot easier to negotiate with versus the dealership. But at the same time, usually they don't want to deal with financing, and they also are not a dealership, so they don't have to worry about the reputation. So if they sell you a car that's a lemon, it's basically your problem to deal with. Whereas with a dealership, it may be a lot harder for you to negotiate with them, but you're more likely to buy a better quality car, and you're also a lot more likely to be able to use financing to buy the car. So if you're looking for a private seller, Craigslist is the main place to look for those kind of sellers. I know sometimes people do sell cars on like Facebook Marketplace and some other marketplace websites, but I know Craigslist is like the OG place to go buy a used car if you're looking for a private party seller. But if you're looking for a dealership, you can just go to any old regular dealership, or you could go to a dealership that specializes in selling used cars, kind of like CarMax, Carvana, and Shift. But I encourage you to shop both, because you never know where you'll find the best deal. So after you've gone to the dealership and you found the car that you want to buy, the next step is to test drive the car. So as a disclaimer, I'm not a mechanic and I don't claim to be the most knowledgeable person about cars, but one of the biggest things you want to watch out for is any unusual sounds. So when you start the car, if you hear an unusual sound, or you shift gears, or you're driving forward or in reverse, or you make a hard turn, you don't want to hear any weird sounds from the car. And if you want to learn more about that, I encourage you to look through YouTube. I know that there's plenty of really good videos out there that'll tell you what to look for before you buy a used car. So these next 2 steps are extremely important. So make sure you do them in the exact order I tell you to. So after you test drive the car and everything checks out, the next thing you want to do is negotiate price. And in any negotiation, in my opinion, there are 2 main rules. First, never make the first offer. There's a common saying that the person who makes the first offer always loses. And I believe that there's some truth to that. If you're negotiating against somebody who's trying to sell something at top dollar, when you make the first offer, you're basically almost setting the ground floor for the negotiation, because the seller's counter offer is almost always going to be higher than the number that you put forward, and then you'll have to meet them in the middle. When it comes to buying a used car, in most cases you won't have to put the first offer down, as people obviously advertise your used cars with a price on it. Secondly, you want to make sure you do your homework before you get to the dealership. So the 3 big things you want to know is the market of the car that you're buying, kind of what range do people buy the car that you're looking at buying, the car that you're negotiating itself, so like the different features of the car, and how much inventory the dealership has of the car that you're looking at. And you can use all this knowledge to be able to effectively negotiate. Negotiating is all about information. And the more information you have, the better you can negotiate. So let's say you went to a dealership, and when you got there, you noticed that 75% of their lot is full of the same exact car with the same exact color. This should be an automatic sign to you that the dealership may be willing to negotiate with you, since they have such big inventory of the car that you want to buy. Also, another negotiating tip, if a dealer ever tries to ask you what monthly payments you're looking at, always try to revert the conversation back to the purchase price of the car. A lot of dealers, what they'll do is that they'll get you focused on the monthly payment, and they'll confuse you, so it makes it more difficult for you to make an informed decision. So always try to focus the conversation back on purchase price. And you can even tell them that you're going to buy the car in cash. So after you finish negotiations and you determine a purchase price for the car, if you're buying from a dealer, you want to ask them, what finance options do they have for you? So typically, like the bank, the dealer will have to run your credit as well to be able to give you an interest rate. And in most cases, unless if you're buying a new car, you'll most likely get a higher rate from the dealer than you will from a bank. But some dealers will offer you like free basic maintenance if you do decide to lend through them. Or they may even give you a rebate if you decide to finance through them as well. It'll be up to you to determine which offer is the best for your situation. So the biggest takeaway from all of this is that being an informed buyer is the most critical thing when you're buying a car. And if you follow these 9 tips that I outlined in this video, you'll be in really good shape to buy your first car. So I'd like to thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button for your YouTube algorithm. It really helps out the channel, helps push this video out to as many people as possible. If you like my perspectives and the way I explain things, consider hitting the subscribe button and notification bell so you get notified every time I post a new video. Also, I'd like to hear from you guys. What's your guys' dream car? Let me know in the comment section down below. I would love to hear from you guys. Follow me on all my social medias. I try to post there every day. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.